Welcome to the Whole Health Podcast. My name is Alex, and thanks for checking out today's episode. According to the Gospel of John, we believe that Jesus invites everyone to an abundant life, one that is characterized by health, strength, joy, and peace. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're all searching for. In fact, it's how God designed it in the first place. Here at Whole Health, we strive to align ourselves with Jesus' invitation into the abundant life, which in fact actually is a truly healthy life. You can check out wholehealth.com to learn more about this, but until then, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Well, welcome back, guys, to the Whole Health Podcast. I'm super excited to jump into today's episode. I have Trevor, my main man here, joining us. Trevor, how you doing?
T-Dizzy in the house. Here we go.
And it comes back, the nickname. But what I'm most excited about is our guest today, the one and only Austin Fruits. Austin, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, thinking of me. I'm honored to be on and just love what you guys are doing.
So quick 60-second recap of this conversation. Austin and I, his name is Austin Fruits. I call him Fruit, so I apologize if that just slips in this conversation. We went to college together, we roomed together, and we've just stayed in touch. I was in his wedding, he was in my wedding, just one of his best friends for life that are on the same train that we just want to help people experience life to the full. The invitation that Jesus offers, he's doing some amazing things, has done some amazing things. So we said, hey, what better person to bring into the Whole Health world to talk about some of the things that you were doing, Austin, in all areas of health to pursue a truly healthy life. So Austin, to kick us off, just tell us the 60-second recap version of who you are, what are you doing, and how we are connected.
Yeah. So we'll do the last one first. Connected with you at college, roommates together, so much fun. And I remember a conversation that we had years ago when I had this realization as I was on the road with a guy named Josh McDowell that sin and struggles, they're not just spiritual, but they're also emotional, relational, and physical. And found this word in our ministry called wholeness, that we are whole people. And then had a conversation with you and you go, holy cow, like this is what I've been going towards, and which was so cool. So just love to see what you guys are doing. But I'm a speaker with a ministry called the Josh McDowell Ministry. We are an apologetics-based ministry, and I'm sure a lot of people out there have heard of Josh McDowell. He's got an incredible story, 152 books, just so faithful in the ministry. But we're an apologetics-based ministry, and we try and give good reasons for the good news that we have in Jesus. So there are real reasons to know with overwhelming evidence that Jesus existed, he died on the cross, and he arose again. The Bible's reliable, but also that piece of the good life and the life that we're looking for. Yeah, we can find freedom eventually in eternity with God, but there's also a real experiential life now that we can live with Jesus and we can live with others.
Austin, that is just awesome, dude. I have so many questions, more so that we could talk about later about how Alex was in college, how was he as a roommate, but those are not while we're sitting down here. I think what is really interesting is it seems like you're extremely educated. You have to be a speaker, obviously, and to know what you're doing through that ministry. Have you always been that way, or is your health and your walk with the Lord, has that progressed over time? Tell us a little bit about that for yourself.
I remember a specific moment when, so I was watching the Da Vinci Code with, I forgot what his name is, but he's like the movie, and he was such an expert on things. I remember watching that movie and seeing how he interacted and how he could bring things up. There was a piece of me that saw that and go, I so deeply desire not just to have knowledge, but wisdom. I think we can have knowledge, but wisdom is knowledge applied in a righteous way. And so there was just a deep desire within me, man, I want to learn. But what that stems from is just a desire to help people, to communicate the love that I've been shown through Jesus. And as I look at my health story and how I've grown is I've started to step back and look back at certain seasons of my life. And I'm young, so there hasn't been a ton, but as I look back at those seasons, it genuinely makes me realize, wow, life is challenging and difficult. And yes, there are some great seasons and great moments and awesome, but we're really shaped by a lot of the difficult seasons in our lives. And I think there's a ton of temptation just to focus on the good and ignore the painful. I love to say we love to share the best and hide the rest. But man, life is challenging. And in the good and the bad seasons of my life, I think overall I've been shaped by and continue to be shaped by what I love to call enduring vulnerabilities. And simply the things that keep continually coming up in our lives. And a huge one for me is the simple belief that I'm not enough. And so I saw that as a young kid growing up in a pastor's home, feeling like I had to perform. I had to be the perfect kid. I had to show up and have all the right answers because I wasn't enough. I saw it in a long battle with pornography and really struggling in the belief that I'm not enough because I'm sinning. I'm unlovable because I'm sinning. I'm not enough for Jesus because I'm sinning. And then I've even seen it in trying to help people in this vivid realization that I can't change people. I am not enough to change people. And so there's this foundation as I've grown in my story and working towards who I want to be. It's like I'm not who I used to be. I'm not who I'm going to be. But the process is just great. And I've truly come to believe that a foundational piece for me in my journey is to believe that God is good. And one of the massive realizations I've had over this past year of working through real deep questions about doubt and questioning God's goodness in areas of my life is that we can have a lot of misconceptions about who God is. And we can project the hurt and the experiences that we've had with other people on earth on God. But when we open Scripture, we only read that God is good. We only read God is good. We as people, we can have good traits, we can do good things. God, a very piece of his nature is he's good. And that's been an anchor point for me. I think of Genesis 50:20 at the end of the story of Joseph. When Joseph's brothers come to him, and it's the amazing story in Scripture where Joseph is sold into slavery by his brothers, and at the end, Joseph is leading in Egypt. He's given great power, and his brothers come up, and Joseph's like, I'm the kid you sold into slavery. And he says to his brothers, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And so the challenge of this life and the pain that we go through, I've realized God is good, and he can actually have great purpose in our pain. And when I found that foundation, it changed to look at a holistic view of health, to say we've got an anchor point when life and when the rug gets tugged out from under us and situations come up. God is good. He has purpose in our pain. How do we seek after him?
So Austin, part of the whole health vision and the conversation, the community we're building is we want to start redefining health. And you were doing exactly that. That part of health is it's not just diet and exercise. It's not just, oh, I have a good relationship with God. It's all connected, body, mind, soul. That's what you're talking about. When it comes to your specific story, I love something you said is that a proper relationship with God starts with a proper understanding. And I literally just wrote about that 2 weeks ago, that one of the first steps to living a truly healthy life is the correct understanding, because so many people are creating sideways energy with their health, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, is because they're aiming for the wrong targets. And partly when we take a step back is because they have a wrong understanding or a misunderstanding of what true health is. And one thing that you said that was spot on is that once we fully understand who God is, then our soul is going to align with that proper understanding. So Austin, over your time in the ministry so far, what have you noticed are some common misunderstandings that are very easy for people to misunderstand when it comes to maybe just health in general, or more specifically the relationship with God? And what are some truths to combat some of those misunderstandings?
Yeah. When I think about how health is misunderstood, It goes back to something that Josh drilled into me, and I'm so thankful for it. But he was always like, define your terms, define your terms. He was like, 90% of Christians don't know how to define 90% of the words they use. And I think it's so true. We can talk about big theological words and we can say things, but in a culture where you're like, I don't even know if I can trust what's on TV, we got to know what we're talking about. So as I sat and thought, man, how would I define health? I feel like it gets back to what purity is. Health is living as we were originally intended to. In the garden with God, like when he created us before sin, there was real connection with God, mind, body, and soul. But realistically, with a world full of sin, can we truly live a healthy lifestyle? I don't know, because sin still corrupts. But what we can do is surround ourselves with people to process the pain, to seek out real relationships where we're vulnerable with people, to deal with the real hurt that's going on. And when I think about the misconceptions, I genuinely used to think that health was just physical. I used to always think, well, if I want to be healthy, I got to go to the gym and I got to eat the colorful foods. Those were the pieces of that is health. But I think in my life, what I've learned is what drives the physical piece for me is the emotional, the relational, and the spiritual health. We all desire to grow, to progress, to have purpose. I think God has gifted us with that. He desires for us to be closer to him. But if I look at where I want to be, I want to live a healthy lifestyle. I have to start where I'm at. And Josh taught me, he said, a problem well defined is half solved. Because if we don't know where we're at, we don't know where we're going to go. And I think as whole beings, we must understand that the pain and the real things we experience in this world are deeply intertwined. They're not just physical, they're emotional, they're relational, they're spiritual. And one of the biggest things is to realize that we live out of our woundedness. We live out of how we've been hurt by others. And there was this study I came across about a year ago that blew my mind. And there was this professor who he wanted to figure out how students would live, how their interactions with people would be if they had a physical deformity. So how would they take in what was going on? And so he devised this experiment where he brought a makeup artist in and some students, and he put a massive scar on their faces to pretty much say, okay, you're going to walk into a room with this massive scar on your face. And how's that interaction going to be with another person? And so the person, they walk in the room, they get this just gory thing on their face. They look in the mirror. I can't imagine what that was like. They send them into a room, talk to a person. And after that conversation, the professor asked them, what's going on here? What's the, like, how was that interaction? And every single person said they were rude, they were unfriendly, and they just stared at the scar on my face. Everybody said that. But the key to this experiment is right after that student looked in the mirror, they saw it, before they went into the room, the makeup artist came over to that person and they said, hold up, just 1 second, I got to touch this up. Instead of touching up the scar, they completely wiped the scar away. And that person went into the room with no scar on their face, yet they still interpreted the interaction as rude and unfriendly, and they stared at the scar. And what that shows is that we live out of our woundedness. We live out of the lies we've been told. We live out of the hurt. And as we get older and older, we get better at hiding and hiding and hiding those things. And so a misunderstanding of health is it's not just physical. And also we've got to define the problem. We got to figure out where we are so that we can move into what God's called us to move into.
That's awesome. Austin, I think what's really cool is that Alex has shared that same exact example on the podcast. And the cool part is that I know you two haven't talked about that example. And I just think it's sweet.
No, let me correct you. when I went out to Austin's wedding like last year, he was the one that informed
That
me.
told
So
you about it.
Austin is the source of it. So I got to
Boom.
give credit where credit
Credit
is
where credit's
due.
due.
No, it's Austin. So when he was saying that, I was
That's
like, I
right.
remember this. But I literally talked about that, Austin, in one of our 3-part series, God's Design for the Soul, on how we
Yeah.
live out of our woundedness. And literally, I learned that from Austin. So it's cool
Yeah.
hearing it from him. So
it is such a powerful illustration of like, man, out of the way that we've been affected by people, we don't like to admit that we live out of that, but we do. We're all looking for like that protection and to be who we want to be. But man, if there's barriers sitting under the surface, we got to figure those out.
awesome. But think about this when you said like health is almost the original garden state when we are living in connection with God. That think about it, there's so many implications of God's design for health in the garden, because think about it, when sin entered the world, what do? We hid in shame,
Yes.
in guilt, and that's what we do now.
Mhm.
Through our wounds, we hide and we cover up. That's
Preaching
literally
now, y'all.
started back in the garden, just like how
Yeah.
we were designed to move and be in communion and be vulnerable. That is God's design for the health. But like you said, sin tainted it all. We find all of those dynamics that we are interacting with today back in the garden. So literally
Completely.
in this next book I'm writing, literally titled Health is Freedom, because the more health we have, the more levels of freedom we have. Literally, we go through the Genesis account talking about God's design. So I love that you said that. Trevor,
Yeah.
sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I love this. I mean, we're bringing some good word right here. And Austin, I think I've never thought about it from that point of view. And I just think that lens is incredibly beneficial to look at it from. Because if you think about like God's purest intention of our relationship with him, like that's where you go. That is exactly where you go, because that's what it's going to be like in eternity with him. And what's beautiful is, or what's important to remember and beautiful, is that like the sin did enter the world, and sin is in us. We are broken people and world, but through Christ we have an opportunity to be made right, made righteous with God. And so it's almost like, it's not almost like, it is like like one of the most crucial cornerstone, right? To use biblical words that maybe aren't as deeply theological, but we can understand. The cornerstone to our health is our clearest understanding of our relationship with God, which comes through faith in Christ and acknowledging what he did on the cross for us. And what I think is interesting that you pointed out, Austin, and we talk about this all the time, but I think it's amazing because I had a conversation with someone earlier this week about this. Your progression of your health, specifically, we're talking about spiritual health right now, is so far from linear, and it is so far from like a clear representation. You're going to get A to Z in this timeline, and it looks exactly the same for Alex and Austin and Trevor. It just does not. Like Austin, you're at a totally different place spiritually than Alex and myself. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because we desire to be known, to know God, to be known by God, and to love other people, which is like his purest intentions for us. And when we recognize that, we can operate out of more levels of abundance. We're talking about John 10:10. And so what I think would be incredibly helpful is unpacking some things that you were coached on, were educated about, that you practically have done, Austin, to increase your spiritual maturity over time, because that's how like naturally it happens. But it's not just because of age. It's because what you said, experiencing those vulnerabilities. It's walking through different seasons alongside Christ. And so I'd love for you to unpack some of those maybe more broad sense habits that you have that may encourage some of the listeners.
To back up a little bit, when you were talking about how the Lord works differently in every areas of every person's life, God's writing a unique story in all of our lives. I think the huge temptation nowadays that is a massive challenge is that we judge our walk with Christ based upon somebody else. And we look to the people on stage. We look to the person who's sharing. We look to the person you're like, oh, they're using their gifts. And when God doesn't show up in our lives the way that he does in somebody else's, we question if God is good to us. We question, man, I so desire to hear the audible voice of God. and somebody shares a story and they're like, and I heard this and it was huge in my life. Look at what the Lord's doing. And we can sit there and we can genuinely think, he's not working in my life that way. But I so deeply desire that. And that is such a challenge for today, but we can't compare because God is writing a unique story on our lives and he's good to us. And so that was a foundational piece for me to learn. I can't compare. It's just a huge struggle, especially in today's age. But daily habits and rhythm, they are so important because it's not in the massive steps that we learn, it's in the really small steps. And that is still a struggle for me because I just want to be where I want to be in 5 years right now. I think that's such a real desire. But the daily habits and rhythms, at least for myself, are genuinely challenging. And I think they're genuinely challenging for most people. You wake up and you're not feeling it emotionally, so you're not going to do it. I mean, there's the ideal that we want to get to, but to be honest, I fail at these rhythms a lot. But something that has been foundational for me is, have you guys heard of a rule of life? So, okay. Yeah. So the rule of life is something that's helped me to live with purpose. And I learned it from Pete Scazzaro in his book, Emotionally Healthy Leader. But what a rule of life does for us is it organizes a unique set of spiritual practices into a structure that enables us to pay attention to God in everything that we do. And it's almost guardrails in our lives to keep us on track. And it's the big picture, not necessarily the little pieces. And what a rule of life is if you got a piece of paper in front of you, and in the middle you write your name and you draw a circle around it. You put 4 quadrants or 4 squares around that circle. And in one quadrant you put prayer, in another you put rest, in another relationships, and in another one work. And those are 4 main areas of our lives: prayer, rest, relationships, and work. And under those headings, think about, this is what I did, is I put in, under prayer, what are some genuine things or habits I want in place to pray better? Fixed hour prayer, whether it's open confession in prayer, whether like the thing I had to learn with prayer is, so I had a word of the year a couple of years ago when I was in seminary, and it was abide. It's like, I just want to learn how to abide with Christ. And what I had to realize is that I could learn all I wanted about the subject of abiding. I could learn all about it. But it was how I was going to grow is in genuine relationship with God. And so learning, what are the things I want in prayer? What are the things in rest? I know specifically that if I'm not having fun at least once a week, I am going to struggle. So I try and get out and surf most mornings because we live in California, because I know if I'm doing something physical that I enjoy, that's rest for me. In relationships, is my relationship with my wife, Hannah, good? Am I being vulnerable and authentic? Do I have accountability set up in my life? In work, do I have structure in place? And what these things do is the rule of life, it keeps you balanced and guarded. And it prohibits adding in other activities or habits that would prohibit keeping or maintaining commitments in another area. And so the daily habits for me started with a rule of life. And to write out the ideal rule of life, this is what I hope my life would look like. But then also to take a step back and to say, what does my life actually look like? And what is one thing that I can practice for the next 2 weeks to say, I'm going to start with this thing. This is my goal. This is where I'm getting. But it's a scary thing. What's the one thing that I can do now to take that step? Habit stacking with James Clear and Atomic Habits. But it's what's the one thing I can do now? But that rule of life, I mean, I'm sure if you Google it, you can find some worksheets on it. That's been foundational for me, just to keep me centered in all areas of my life. And to, see what the Lord could do.
Austin, I love that. I'm a huge fan of that. I actually created my own rule of life, and it is so clarifying because it puts words and boundaries, and I love the word guardrails around honestly keeping the most important things the most important things. So as we round third and we're coming home, Austin, one final question. I'm going to skip down to the last one is what is one thing you would tell everyone in pursuit of a truly healthy life? And this could be profound, big, abstract, very practical. Just one thing that if you had a billboard and you had to slap this message on or whatever that is, what's one thing you would share with everyone?
Yeah, I think is I look at what I'm pursuing, and I think a lot of people are pursuing. We're pursuing the good life. We're pursuing fulfillment. We're pursuing satisfaction. We're pursuing the things that make us happy. And I think the world throws at us materialism and the things that are like, this is the immediate gratification. This is what we want. And we latch onto those things genuinely. Like it is a struggle to look at me, and I even think after this, like there's a surfboard that I've been looking at on OfferUp, and I'm sitting there like, if I could go buy that surfboard, I would be so happy. But what happens, our brains are created for novelty. We're created for new things. And so 10 months down the road, after I've surfed that thing a couple times, it's not going to be fun anymore. I'm going to want the next thing. And it gets old. And I think what that shows is that simply we were created for something more. We were created for something more than this sin-soaked world. A world that when we look out and we struggle with the pain and we struggle with the suffering, that screams that this world is not the way that things are supposed to be. And all the activity and all the fun, it's great. But it's in the relationships, in the true connection with others, that I think that's where we find pieces of what we're made for. We simply can't do it without Jesus, and we can't do it without others. And I think the baseline of health in my life is, am I connected in relationship with God, in relationship with other people? In the battle of, I want to live out of my woundedness because I want to protect myself. But it's in the vulnerable areas when I share and I'm open and I'm real and I'm honest. When I experience, this is one of the coolest things I think about being built in relationships. When we're truly honest and open with another person, we share the sin, we share the struggle. I'm really hurting here. I'm screwing up in my life. And a person on the other side of the table sits there and goes, man, I see that. I get that. I'm so sorry this happened to you. And I think a lot of us, we haven't experienced that, which is so sad. But when we experience being loved in the midst of struggle, I think that is a small picture of what it means to be loved by God. And those experiences in relationship with other people, we got to like blow up and think big. We wouldn't even have the relationships with brothers and sisters in Christ without Jesus. He gives us one another for support, to process the pain, to have fun and to laugh. But being loved by other people just for who we are is a lot like being loved by God. And we can sit and we can say, man, I don't like the big love of God, the big picture. It's easy to believe it. But the difference between a belief and a conviction, a belief, we know something. A conviction is we know why we believe it. We know what we believe, we know why we believe it, and we know how we've experienced it in our lives. And I think in relationships with God and others is where we experience what it means.
Austin, that's awesome. And man, it's just so cool to hear your story and the way that God continues to move in your life and the way that He has aligned your heart to encourage and to help other people live a truly healthy life. Austin, man, we're going to be keeping in touch. I feel like we could probably talk about this for hours, truthfully, because we're all like-minded, striking the same chord. But man, just thank you so much for being on, and would love to hear if any of the listeners are not already connected with you. Where can they find you? Give us the good stuff.
Yeah, find me on the socials at Austin Fruits. You can find me on josh.org. That's our Josh McDowell Ministry website or my website. But yeah, would love to connect and can't say thank you enough for having me on. It's a privilege to do this together and to even grow in our faith. Like, the amazing thing is watching the Lord move and seeing what he does and looking back and seeing his faithfulness. So yeah, thanks for having me on. And man, if someone wants to reach out, I'd love to connect.
Thanks, Austin. Hope you have a good rest of your day, my man.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more, check us out on social media or visit holohealth.com to learn how you can start living a truly healthy life today. That is HOLOHLTH.com. Thanks.